your paper needs to be soaked. Okay, that ensures the paper is soft enough to be pressed against your print or your plate or your etching plate, dry point plate, mezzotint, engraving, whatever you're doing, and it picks up the detail. If you use dry paper, it doesn't really pick up the detail. So we've just put some cartridge paper in here, just kind of cheaper cartridge paper for this workshop, in there for at least 10 minutes to soak. Okay. Paper that works best for soaking is your paper with high content of cotton, usually about 60% or above. We have a range of fine art papers if you want to use more quality paper for etching and monoprinting. In the resource centres, you're welcome to buy that. If you use like a screen printing paper, for example, they usually have a plastic coating on it, so they don't coat very well with drying again. They'll dry or bobbly, but this will be fine as long as we dry it in the stat, which I'll show you in a second. So we lift our paper up at an angle. You might notice that I'm using a little folded over bit of paper, which is just to the side, little paper tab. It will prevent our inky fingers getting on the paper. I'm just put it against there. I'm just going to squeegee the excess water off.
So if we've already worked on a piece, how come we can't print it on it again because you'd have to wet it?
No, you can, because it's oil-based ink, it won't run.
So you can do that again even though you've got an image on there and then continue.
Yeah. You just let it dry in between, Babs, and then you can put it back in, blot it, and away you go again.
How long does the ink take to dry?
Oh, a couple of days. Yeah.
So you could be working on things for like a couple of weeks, couldn't you, really?
Yeah, you can work on them for a year if you want to. I mean, with registration, and imagine the paper has a bit of a maximum, can put up with only so much. However, if you're wanting to print plate on plate, it's probably best to do it at the same time. Prep all your plates at the same time, and then just keep sending it through the press in one go. You know, it's probably best to do that because you'll get your registration correct doing that, because you just keep your paper trapped in the roller. But I'll show you that now. But yeah, I mean, 2 or 3 occasions, yeah, I think you definitely could soak it again and put it back in. Sometimes if it's soaked for too long, it just kind of turns to mush. You can pre-soak paper as well. If you're doing an edition and you just want to get prepped and then crack on that day, you can pre-soak your paper, blot it, and then keep it in a airtight plastic bag, and it keeps it moist. So you can prep all that the day before if you wanted to. So then we put our paper in the blotters, and I've just got a piece of newsprint on top. Once these blotters get really wet, they start balling, so little bits of blotter comes off and balls, and it'll end up all over your print, and it's really weird. So make sure a bit of newsprint's on top. We get our paper. We just hold it up to the light, and we just check that there's no kind of shiny bits on it. If there's kind of rivers of water and shiny bits, it means it's not blotted enough, and likelihood is that it'll rip once it goes through the press. Okay. Also, too much ink on your plate can make your paper rip as well. So that's why we need quite a nice thin layer of ink. A, because if once it goes through your press, it'll just blob and smudge and squelch outwards, and B, too much ink can stick to your paper and then pull it off and it'll rip. Okay, so we've blotted our paper. With our blotted paper, we just lie it on a piece of newsprint, or you can use acetate. And this is a registration sheet. This is going to allow us to see where our plate will end up on our print. And especially if you're printing editions, this is really important because you want your plate to appear in the same place on your paper each time. Okay, so we're just going to put a little corner marking in each corner. The reason why I'm doing this while the paper's wet is because paper can stretch, it can change shape once wet. I mean, I think it can kind of change up to ½ centimetre to 1 centimetre. So for a more accurate registration sheet, do it when it's wet. If it's a bit rougher, you know, you can do it when it's dry. But best practice to do when it's wet. So then I take my, first plate, and I'm thinking along the lines that these plates are exactly the same size. I think mine are slightly differ, but we'll find the same size ones for you. You don't have to have a square plate as well. And this is, you can cut this up on the guillotine. You can have a circular plate. You could cut it with scissors and have a different shaped plate. You could have a really long, thin plate. You could have 2 plates that are different sizes. You could print one plate with one colour, then print another plate which is circular over the top, kind of collage it together as it were. So you can play around with different sizes. I think prints usually look better a bit higher on the paper. Sometimes if it's central, it looks like it's dropping off the end of the page for some reason. And also you've got room to sign it at the bottom then. If this was on acetate, it'd be really good because every time the bottom gets inky, you can just get a cloth and wipe it off. And you can do your markings in Sharpie pen as well. Okay, so we've made our registration sheet, and now I lift up my piece of paper because we don't want to put it down because that's going to print. So we lift it up on one side, and I'm just going to line it up with both markings. And as I bring that down, that should line up. Okay, then to finish it off, I'm going to put a piece of tissue on top. Tissue is much better at keeping the water off the blankets, so we use tissue on the top to protect the blankets. Okay, blankets go down nice and smooth, and if you guys just watch out the way because the bed's going to come back towards you. And then very controlled, we take the bed through. And this is where we make sure we haven't got lanyards on, dangly jewellery, the hair's tied back. And we just take it through nice and controlled. If you're quite tall, you might want to bend your knees a little bit so you're not leaning down. Okay, and I'm just going to slow the press down because I want to see if my page is still trapped underneath the roller. If you want to just print one plate, then you just send the press right through and take your print out, and that will be done. Because I'm wanting to print 2 over the top of each other, I want my paper to be trapped underneath the roller, but my plate needs to be released. So I'll just have a look, maybe a bit more. Okay. Okay, it's been released there, but the paper's still trapped under the roller.
How can we see that? I don't understand what you
See,
mean.
there's an emboss there.
That's the
Can you
beginning of it, so we know it's gone
Yeah,
past
we know
it,
it's
you
gone
mean.
past the roller,
So
yeah.
why would you need to do that differently than if you were just doing one? I don't understand.
If you're doing one, you just release the paper and then your print's done.
So you
I'm
take
now
it off
going to
and put
print,
another one.
yeah, now I'm going to print another plate
I thought
over
it was
this.
mono printing, but you only did one.
That's one print from that particular plate. I'm going to print another plate
It's one
over the
per
top of
plate.
this.
Are you going to put a different one on?
Yeah.
Nice.
So, put my finger down to make sure that that plate isn't going to go anywhere. And peel that off. Then I'm going to use some registration blocks, one on the left and then one underneath. And then I can take this plate out. Get my second plate. And then I'm going to decide which way round it's going to go.
What are those
That way.
bars called again?
Registration plates.
Registration plates.
The block, yeah, registration blocks,
Is-
metal blocks.
Is that so that's evaporated enough now?
Probably not, no. I'd leave it a bit longer, but just for the purpose of the demo. And also we'll put a few extra sheets of tissue on the top. So now the plate's in place, we can take these off. Usually I'd just roll that the opposite direction, and this will naturally kind of just flop over in the right position. But because I want to put an extra piece of tissue on, I'm just going to gently drop that, and then I'll put a bit more tissue on there. Let's come over again. And then send it through the other way. So nice and controlled, so we're not putting any pressure on the end stops, because they're what's keeping this bed from dropping on our toes.
So it won't automatically stop when it gets to the end?
No, you have to stop it yourself.
So where is this end stop?
It's just these safety features that are on the bottom of the bed here. It traps the bed so it doesn't just keep rolling off.
Do you feel that happening when you're rolling it then? You know,
You
when
can
come to that.
you can feel the momentum picking up because it's so heavy. So I'd just watch.
You need to
Yeah, just watch and then stop it before it gets to the end. Okay, so now printed the 2 plates. Might have put a bit too much. Me and John set the press again. I think it might have just been set a little bit too tight.
Oh, I love that talc.
So that's the 2 plates over the top of each other. So you can see the talc here. This is where the newsprint has acted as a resist. You can see the marks, the kind of wiping of the cotton buds. If you wanted to, you can produce a ghost print, which is a second print from the same plate, which always ends up a little bit lighter because you've used up most of the ink on the first print. If you wanted to, you can peel things off and reposition them. You know, use them on a different print. I might print that just to show you guys. So this, because the paper's wet, we want it to dry really flat. Okay, so we take it over to the stack. We just put it underneath some tissue, and when that layer's full, we'll put the next layer on, next board on. Then we just stack them all up, leave them in there for a couple of days, and then they dry flat. Just show you the ghost print. Or you'll use tissue when you've done your print, and if you feel it needs changing, just leave it in a pile, maybe on this press, and we dry it out and rip it up, and you can use it for dry point. The way we ink up dry point and etching is by polishing it at the end with tissue so we can reuse it. So we're just doing 1 plate, so I can just send it all the way through to the end of this blanket now. Got a big eagle on the top.
Yeah, keep looking at that. Nice to use.
So that's a ghost print, so it's just you know, less ink, yeah. But people do these and, you know, use them as backgrounds to print over, or you can hand colour them, you could sew into them, you can do whatever you want. But it's a bit of a ghost because it's a bit more ghostly, a bit lighter than the first one.